Dear students, I hope you all are safe and healthy at your homes and eagerly waiting for our video. I assure you that it will be very interesting and informative. Students, there will be a beautiful smile at your faces after watching this video. Today, we are going to study the chapter Equality, the first chapter from the book Social and Political Life 2 of subject Social Science, Class 7. Students, do you know equality plays a vital role in democracy? In India, the country of diverse population, although constitutions provide safeguards to every citizen irrespective of discrimination. But in reality, the common man and women are far away from it. Rather, they face many discriminations on the basis of equality. Students, in this chapter, we will study that how the different communities of India react with their fellow citizens on different situations, and the necessity of equality will be studied through some examples in this chapter. Students, in this chapter, we will study how Kanta, Om Prakash Valmiki, and Mr. and Mrs. Ansari feel the taste of discrimination in different ways. Students, we also briefly discuss the issue of inequality in United States of America. By this, we can say that the inequality is not a regional or national, but it is a worldwide issue. Students, rather, it can be seen in many democratic countries of the world, irrespective of their economic conditions. Students, India is a democratic country. In the class 6th book, you have studied the key elements of a democratic government. These include people's participation, the resolutions of conflicts, and equality and justice. Equality is a key feature of democracy and influences all aspects of its functioning. In this chapter, you will read more about equality, what it is, why it is important in a democracy, and whether or not everyone is equal in India. Let's begin by looking at Kanta's story. Students, on the day of voting, Kanta and her friend Sujata are standing in a line and waiting their turn to cast the vote. At the same time, Kanta said, "How wonderful, Sujata, that we all together can cast our vote for a democracy from the same line of equality. Even Mr. Jain is also standing and waiting with us in the same line." Students, here Mr. Jain is an industrialist and employer of Kanta. Kanta decided to vote for the candidate who has promised to bring pipe water to her area. After voting, Mr. Jain directed Kanta to come and finish her work at his home. Now, Kanta is saying to Sujata that her child, Gudiya, has been suffering from fever and she has to take her to the hospital. But she will have to finish the work at Jain's house first and ask for some advance. Students, Kanta is living in a slum which is never cleaned. Due to this, her daughter Gudiya falls ill. Kanta asked some advance from Mrs. Jain. Although Mrs. Jain helps her by giving some advance, but same time she warns her not making a habit of it. Students, when Kanta goes to General Hospital to see the doctor for her child Gudiya, she has to wait with standing in a long line. She thought that Jain Madam and Jain Sahib may stand in line to vote, but they never have to do it when their children are sick. Students, the story above begins with Kanta standing in line to cast her vote. Look again at the various people who are standing in line with her. Kanta recognizes her employer Ashok Jain and Chote Lal, her neighbor. In a democratic country like India, all adults, irrespective of what religion they belong to, how much education they have had, and what caste they are, or whether they are rich or poor, are allowed to vote. Students, this is called universal adult franchise and is an essential aspect of all democracies. The idea of universal adult franchise is based on the idea of equality because it states that every adult in a country, irrespective of their wealth and the communities he or she belongs to, has one vote. Kanta is excited to vote and happy that she is equal to all of the other because each of them has one vote. But as her day goes on, Kanta becomes less certain about what this equality really means. Students, let's take a look at pictures given in the chapter. You will notice that Kanta lives in a slum and has a drain behind her house. Her daughter is sick, but she cannot take the day off from work because she needs to borrow money from her employers to take her child to the doctor. Her job as a domestic help tires her out, and finally, she ends her day by again standing in a long line. This line in front of the government hospital is unlike the one for voting because most of the people standing in it are poor. Students, Kanta is one of many people who live in democratic India and who have the right to vote, but whose daily living and working conditions are far from equal. Apart from being poor, people in India experience inequality in different ways. Let us see what this means by reading the two stories given here. Each of these is based on real incidents in people's lives and reflects the different kind of inequalities that exist in India. One of the more common forms of inequality in India is the caste system. If you live in rural India, your caste identity is something that you probably learned or experienced very young. If you live in urban India, some of you might think that people no longer believe in caste. But just look at these matrimonial shown from a leading English newspaper and you will see how important the issue of caste continues to be in the mind of highly educated urban Indians. Students, in your textbook, some pictures of matrimonial are given in which you can see that The highly qualified people also have their mindset for casteism. Now, let us read a story about the experiences of a Dalit child attending school. You have already read. Dalit is a term that the so-called lower caste use to address themselves. Dalit means broken, and by using these words, lower caste are pointing to how they were and continue to be seriously discriminated against. Om Prakash Valmiki, 1950 to 2013, is a famous Dalit writer. In his autobiography, Jhoothan, he writes, I had to sit away from the others in the class, and that too on the floor. The mat ran out before reaching the spot I sat on. Sometimes I would have to sit way behind everybody, right near the door. Sometimes they would beat me without any reason. When he was in class 4, the headmaster asked Om Prakash to sweep the school and the playground. He writes, the playground was very larger than his small physique could handle, and in cleaning it, his back began to ache. His face was covered with dust. Dust had gone inside his mouth. The other children of his class were studying and he was sweeping. Headmaster was sitting in his room and watching him. He was not allowed to take a break to drink water. He swept through windows and doors of the school rooms. The eyes of the teachers and the boys saw this spectacle. Om Prakash was made to sweep the school and the playground for the next couple of days, and this only came to an end when his father, who happened to be passing by, saw his son sweeping. He confronted the teachers and then, walking away from the school holding Om Prakash's hand, he said loudly for all of them to hear, "You are a teacher, so I am leaving now. But remember this much, master. He will study right here in this school, and not just him, but there will be more coming after him." Students, the second story is based on an incident that took place in one of the India's largest cities and is common practice in most parts of the country. It is a story about Mr. and Mrs. Ansari, who were looking an apartment on rent in the city. They had the money, and so paying the rent was no problem. They went to a property dealer for help to find a place. They visited the first apartment. Mr. Ansari liked it very much and decided to take it. However, when the landlady found out their names, she made an excuse about how she could not rent the house to someone who ate meat because the building did not have any non-vegetarian resident. Both the Ansaris and the property dealer were surprised to hear this because they could smell fish being cooked in the neighbor's house. The same excuse was repeated in the second and the third apartments. Finally, the property dealer told them that they might want to change their name and call themselves Mr. and Mrs. Kumar. The Ansaris were reluctant to do this and decided to look some more. In the end, it took a whole month of looking at apartments before they found a landlady who was willing to give them a place on rent. Students, I think you have understood by now that the caste we are born into, the religion we practice, the class background we come from, whether we are male or female, these are often the things that determine why some people are treated unequally. Om Prakash Valmiki and the Ansaris are being treated unequally on the basis of differences of caste and religion. Students, when persons are treated unequally, their dignity is violated. The dignity of both Om Prakash Valmiki and the Ansaris was violated because of the way in which they were treated. By picking on him and making him sweep the school because of his caste, Om Prakash Valmiki's schoolmates and teachers hurt his dignity badly and made him feel as if he was less than equal to all other students in the school. Being a child, Om Prakash Valmiki could do very little about the situation that he was in. It was his father who, on seeing his son sweep, felt angry by this unequal treatment and confronted the teachers. The Ansari's dignity was also hurt when persons refused to lease their apartments to them. However, when the property dealer suggested that they change their name, it was their dignity or self-respect that made them refuse this suggestion. Students, Om Prakash and Ansaris do not deserve to be treated like this. They deserve the same respect and dignity as anyone else. Students, there are some pictures mentioned in your textbook from the movie Diwar, in which dignity was violated. Students, in the 1975 movie Diwar, a boy who works as a shoe shine refuses to pick up a coin thrown at him. He feels that there is dignity in the work that he does and insists that his fee be given respectfully. Students, now we will study the equality in Indian democracy. The Indian Constitution recognizes every person as equal. This means that every individual in the country, including male and female person from all castes, religions, tribes, educational and economic backgrounds, are recognized as equal. This is not to say that inequality ceases to exist. It doesn't, but at least in democratic India, the principle of the equality of all is recognized. While earlier no law existed to protect people from discrimination and ill treatment, now there are several that work to see that people are treated with dignity and all is recognized. Students, in the Constitution of India for the recognition of equality, many provisions are available. Here we are going to discuss some of them. First, that every person is equal before the law. What this means is that every person from the president of the country to Kanta, a domestic worker, has to obey the same laws. Second, no person can be discriminated against on the basis of their religion, race and caste, place of birth, or whether they are female or male. Third, every person has access to all public places, including playgrounds, hotels, shops, and markets. All persons can use publicly available wells, roads, and bathing ghats. Fourth, untouchability has been abolished. Students, the two ways in which the government has tried to implement the equality that is granted in the Constitution is: First, through laws, and second, through government programs or schemes to help disadvantaged communities. Students, there are several laws in India that protect every person's right to be treated equally. In addition to laws, the government has also set up several schemes to improve the lives of communities and individuals who have been treated unequally for several centuries. These schemes are to be ensure greater opportunity for people who have not had this in the past. One of the steps taken by the government includes the midday meal schemes. This refers to the program introduced in all government elementary schools to provide children with cooked lunch. Tamil Nadu was the first state in India to introduce this scheme in 2001. After this, the Supreme Court asked all state governments to begin this program in their school within 6 months. This program has had many positive effects. Students, due to midday meal scheme, more poor children have begun enrolling and regularly attending school. Teachers reported that earlier children would often go home for lunch and then not return to school, but now with the midday meal being provided in school, their attendance has improved. Students, this program has also helped reduce caste prejudices because children of all castes in the school eat this meal together, and in quite a few places, Dalit women have been employed to cook the meal. The midday meal program also helps reduce the hunger of poor students who often come to school and cannot concentrate because their stomachs are empty. Students, while government programs play an important role in increasing equality of opportunity, there is much that still needs to be done. This is because people refuse to think of everyone as equal even though the law requires it. One of the main reasons for this is that attitudes changes very slowly. Even though persons are aware that discrimination is against the law, they continue to treat people unequally on the basis of their caste, religion, disability, economic status, and because they are women. It is only when people begin to believe that no one is inferior and that every person deserves to be treated with dignity that present attitudes can change. Issues of equality in other democracies. Students, you are probably wondering whether India is the only democratic country in which there is inequality and where the struggle for equality continues to exist. Students, the truth is that in many democratic countries around the world, the issue of equality continues to be the key issue around which communities struggle. In the United States of America, the African American whose ancestors were the slaves who were brought over from Africa continue to describe their lives today as largely unequal. This, despite the fact that there was a movement in the late 1950s to push for equal rights for African Americans. Prior to this, African Americans were treated extremely unequally in the United States and denied equality through law. When traveling by bus, they either had to sit at the back of the bus or get up from their seat whenever a white person wished to sit. Students, these are the pictures of Rosa Parks from United States of America. Rosa Parks, 1913 to 2005, was an African American woman. Tired from a long day at work, she refused to give up her seat on a bus to a white man on 1st December 1955. Her refusal that day started a huge agitation against the unequal ways in which African Americans were treated, and which came to be known as the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibited discriminations on the basis of race, religion, or national origin. It is also stated that all schools would be open to African American children and that they would no longer have to attend separate schools specially set up for them. However, despite this, a majority of African Americans continue to be among the poorest in the country. Most African American children can only afford to attend government schools that have fewer facilities and poorly qualified teachers as compared to white students who either go to private schools or live in areas where the government schools are as highly rated as private schools. Students, now we are going to read some excerpt from Article 15 of the Indian Constitution. Prohibition of discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. First, the state shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, and place of birth, or any of them. Second, no citizen shall, on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them, be subject to any disability, liability, restrictions, or conditions with regard to a. access to shops, public restaurants, hotels, and places of public entertainment, or the use of wells, tanks, bathing huts, roads, and places of public resorts maintained wholly or partially out of state funds or dedicated to the use of general public. Students, no country can be described as being completely democratic. There are always communities and individuals trying to expand the idea of democracy and push for a greater recognition of equality on existing as well as new issues. Central to this is the struggle for the recognition of all persons as equal and for their dignity to be maintained. In this book, you will read about how this issue of equality affects various aspects of our daily lives in democratic India. As you read these chapters, think about whether the equality of all persons and their being able to maintain their dignity is upheld. Students, now we will check your knowledge as what you have learned from this chapter. Question number 1. Which state of India first started the midday meal scheme in school? Students, this is a multiple choice answer question. You have to choose one right state from the 4 choices. A. Tamil Nadu, B. Bihar, C. Delhi, D. Maharashtra. Students, as you studied in this chapter, Tamil Nadu was the first state in India to introduce this scheme in 2001. Therefore, A. Tamil Nadu is right answer.
Question number 2. When did the discrimination on the basis of race, religion, and national origin was prohibited in USA?
Students, in this question, you have to choose one right year from the 4th choice. A. 1995, B. 1964, C. 1993, D. 1992. Students, as you studied in this chapter, the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, religion, or national origin. Therefore, B. 1964 is right answer. Question number 3. Which article of the Indian Constitution prohibits the discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth? Students, in this question, you have to choose one right article from the 4 choices. A. Article 16. B. Article 17. C. Article 14. D. Article 15. Students, as you studied in this chapter, excerpt from Article 15 of the Indian Constitution, therefore, D. Article 15 is right answer. Question number 4. When did in India the government adopted the Rights of Persons with Disability Act? Students, in this question you have to choose one right year from the 4 choices. A. 1995, B. 1994, C. 1993, D. 1992. Students, A. 1995 is right answer. Students, now the last question is question number 5.
On what basis people are discriminated in India?
A. Caste and gender. B. High and low social status. C. Religion. D. All of the above. Students, as you studied in this chapter how the Kanta, Om Prakash Valmiki and Mr. and Mrs. Ansari feel the taste of discrimination in different ways. All these people belongs to different caste, gender, social status and religion. Therefore, D, all the above, is right answer. So, students, with this, our today's chapter ends now. Thanks for watching.